There's a reason you can't see your way out right now. 2,000 years ago, a parable about a donkey they tried to bury alive revealed something about human suffering that modern psychology is only now beginning to understand. This isn't just another motivational story. This is ancient wisdom that explains why you're stuck, and more importantly, how to use that exact situation as your escape. By the time this story ends, you'll understand why the Stoics taught this parable to their students, why Viktor Frankl referenced it in his work on meaning, and why it's more relevant today than ever. You're going to see your current struggle differently, not as something happening to you, but as something being built for you. Let me show you what they saw. The story begins under a starless night. A donkey named Tobias, loyal and hardworking, was grazing peacefully while his owner slept. From the shadows emerged thieves, men whose trade was suffering. Before Tobias could alert his master, they muzzled him, chained him, and tore him from everything he knew. Within hours, he was in a place designed for one purpose: extraction. He arrived at a vast arid compound where skeletal donkeys circled millstones in endless rotation. Their eyes were empty, their spirits broken. The masters of this hell, brutal men who understood exactly how much suffering a creature could endure before death, kept the donkeys alive with just enough water and food to continue the extraction. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake. This was systematic. Tobias tried to escape multiple times. His spirit, still intact, refused to accept this reality. But each attempt brought brutal beatings. Each failure carved away another piece of his will. Modern psychology calls this learned helplessness. The Stoics called it slavery to external circumstances. Within days, Tobias stood at the edge of resignation. The psychological mechanism that keeps most people trapped was activating inside him. Before we continue, recognize this pattern. You felt this. The job that drains you but pays the bills. The relationship that died years ago but fear keeps you present. The dream you abandoned because the first 3 attempts failed. That voice saying it's impossible, it's too late, you're not strong enough. That's the same voice speaking to Tobias. It's not truth, it's programming. In 1967, psychologist Martin Seligman discovered something disturbing. Dogs subjected to repeated shocks they couldn't escape eventually stopped trying. Even when escape became possible, they had learned that their actions didn't matter. Tobias was learning the same lesson. This is why most people stay trapped, not because escape is impossible, but because repeated failure teaches the brain that effort is futile. Then fate intervened. The compound gates jammed open during repairs. Tobias had lost so much weight that his chains hung loose. Before him was freedom, an open path to escape. But something happened that reveals the deepest truth about human nature. He turned away. The opportunity terrified him more than continued suffering. This is where most people live their entire lives. It was then that a heron, white as snow, eyes ancient and knowing, spoke from the branches above. What are you doing? You cannot miss this opportunity. This is the crucial element. The heron represents something the Stoics understood deeply: perspective from above. When you're in the well, you can't see the ladder. When you're in the storm, you can't see its ending. You need guidance from someone who can see what you cannot. Encouraged by the heron's insistence, Tobias finally gathered courage. He slipped his chains and ran. The heron flew alongside him, but the criminals weren't going to let their investment escape. They mounted horses and began the chase. At that exact moment, as if the universe itself conspired against him, a massive storm erupted. Rain so heavy Tobias couldn't see beyond his nose. The ground became a swamp. Every step was agony. Exhausted, beaten, barely able to stand, Tobias began to cry. "I can't do it. I can't do it." The words we've all spoken, the moment when continuation seems impossible and surrender seems merciful. This is the inflection point. This is where 99% of people turn back. Not because they've actually reached their limit, but because they can't see past the storm to what's waiting on the other side. But the heron had flown above the clouds. From that elevation, it could see 3 things Tobias couldn't. 1. The storm was ending just ahead. 2. His owner's settlement was only 300 meters away. 3. The pursuers would retreat at the settlement boundary. The heron knew something crucial. Tobias was running toward the solution while believing he was drowning in the problem. "Keep going," the Heron called. "Don't give up. Please keep going." Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz by discovering this exact principle. In Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote that suffering ceases to be suffering when it finds meaning. But meaning isn't something you feel in the moment. It's something you see in retrospect from elevation after you've emerged. The Heron represents your future self looking back, knowing that this storm was necessary, that this suffering had purpose, that you were closer than you thought. Then, just as the pursuers were about to capture him, the rain stopped. Tobias could see clearly. 300 meters ahead, his owner's settlement, safety, home. Inspired by that light, he found strength he didn't know existed and ran. The men, seeing the settlement, retreated. Tobias collapsed into his owner's arms, free. But the real lesson was only beginning. Tobias looked at the Heron with gratitude and confusion. "Why did you trust me so much? If it weren't for you, I would have given up." The Heron's answer is why this parable has survived 2,000 years. It's why the Stoics taught it. It's why you need to hear it right now in whatever storm you're currently facing. The Heron spoke calmly. When you're in the middle of the storm, things are not seen clearly. Never forget that, Tobias. From above the clouds where I was flying, I could see that you were running toward the end of the storm, toward shelter. I asked you not to stop because I could see what you couldn't see. I knew you would be safe soon, even when you couldn't see it from inside the rain. Tobias learned 3 truths that day. First, your perspective during the storm is inherently limited. Second, movement forward, even when you can't see the destination, is the only rational choice. Third, the storm always ends, always. The question is whether you'll still be moving when it does. These aren't motivational platitudes. These are strategic principles the Stoics used to govern empires. Let's make this concrete. You're in a job that's draining you. Every day feels like Tobias circling that millstone. You can't see a way out because from inside that situation, the obstacles are all you can see. But someone with perspective, a mentor, a therapist, your future self, can see that you're actually 3 months from a pivot point, 6 months from a skill that changes everything. The storm is ending. You just can't see it yet. Or the relationship that's falling apart. From inside the pain, all you see is loss. But from elevation, from the perspective of someone who's emerged from similar storms, this ending is leading you toward the person you're actually meant to build with, the one who sees you clearly. The storm is removing what doesn't serve you, but you're crying, "I can't do it," because you can't see the settlement 300 meters ahead, or the business that failed, the dream you abandoned, the version of yourself you gave up on after 3 attempts. You're Tobias turning away from the open gate because past failures taught you that effort is futile. But someone with perspective can see that those failures were preparation, that you're positioned exactly where you need to be, that the chains are already loose. You just need to run. Here's what nobody tells you. Positive thinking alone fails because it tries to deny the storm. Toxic positivity says the storm isn't real, isn't that bad, just think happy thoughts. But the Heron didn't deny the storm. It acknowledged the rain, the exhaustion, the pursuers. All of it was real. What it offered wasn't false hope. It offered accurate perspective. The storm is real, and it's ending. The Stoics had a specific practice for this. They called it the view from above. When trapped in immediate circumstances, mentally elevate. Imagine seeing your situation from a bird's perspective, from a month ahead, a year ahead, from your deathbed looking back. What does that elevated view reveal? Usually that the current storm is temporary, that movement forward is possible, that you're closer than you think. If this shift in perspective landed for you, if you felt something click into place, subscribe to this channel. I break down ancient wisdom like this every week. Not motivation, but mechanism. Not cheerleading, but clear-eyed analysis of how to actually navigate the storms. For now, let me give you the final piece of this parable. When Tobias finally understood the lesson, he realized something that changed everything. The chains weren't just physical, they were psychological. The real prison was his belief that continuation was impossible, that rescue wasn't coming, that the storm would never end. The moment he accepted the Heron's perspective, the moment he trusted movement despite invisibility, the physical chains became irrelevant. You're in a storm right now. Maybe not as dramatic as Tobias, but real nonetheless. Financial pressure, relationship chaos, career uncertainty, health crisis, creative block. The feeling that you've been circling the same problems for years with no escape visible. I'm telling you what the Heron told Tobias. From where I sit, I can see things you cannot. The storm is ending. Safety is closer than you think. Keep moving. When you want to quit, ask 3 questions. 1. Am I actually at my limit, or does it just feel that way? Tobias felt finished but had 60% capacity remaining. 2. What would this look like from elevation? From a year ahead, will this moment seem as impossible as it does now? 3. What if safety is 300 meters ahead but invisible from my current position? What if continuation is the only rational choice? Here's why this works. Your amygdala, the fear center, operates on incomplete information. It sees the storm and signals maximum threat. But your prefrontal cortex can override that signal with perspective. This isn't toxic positivity, this is using your full brain. The Heron represents your prefrontal cortex, the ability to see beyond immediate threat to strategic reality. Most people let the amygdala drive. The Stoics taught cortex sovereignty. Every major figure who accomplished anything significant faced this exact moment. Lincoln during the Civil War, Churchill in 1940, Mandela in prison. They all had storms where continuation seemed impossible. They all had moments of I can't do it. But something, perspective, philosophy, a glimpse of elevation, kept them moving. The settlement was 300 meters ahead. They couldn't see it. They moved anyway. Tomorrow you will face the choice. Continue or quit. Move forward or turn back. Trust perspective you can't yet see, or surrender to what feels true right now. Here's your action. Identify your Heron. Who in your life has elevation on your situation? Not cheerleaders telling you it'll all be fine, but someone who's been through similar storms and emerged. Someone who can see your 300 meters when you cannot. Trust their perspective until you achieve your own elevation. One warning: some people will offer false perspective. They'll tell you to quit, that you've tried enough, that it's okay to give up. These are people without elevation speaking from their own storms. They're Tobias before the Heron arrived, turning away from open gates because past failures taught them surrender. Do not mistake their limited perspective for wisdom. Seek elevation, not commiseration. The Heron didn't rescue Tobias. It provided perspective while Tobias did the running. This is crucial. No one can carry you out of your storm, but someone with elevation can tell you which direction to run, how close you are, why continuation matters. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't offer salvation, they offered clear-eyed assessment of reality from elevated perspective. That's what this parable offers you. I'm going to tell you something you might not believe right now. Your settlement is closer than you think. The storm is ending. Not because I'm offering false hope, but because storms always end. That's not motivation. That's meteorology. The question isn't whether the storm ends. The question is whether you'll still be moving when it does. Will you be Tobias running towards safety? Or will you be back at the compound having turned away from the open gate? This parable has survived 2,000 years not because it's comforting, but because it's true. The Stoics taught it to prepare their students for inevitable storms. Viktor Frankl referenced it when explaining how meaning sustains us. You're hearing it now because you need the perspective it offers. The Heron's view. The knowledge that your current impossibility is temporary. That movement forward is the only strategy that works. Let me leave you with the 3 truths Tobias learned, because you need them right now. First, your perspective during the storm is limited by design. You cannot see the full picture from inside the rain. Second, movement forward, even blind movement, is strategically superior to surrender. Third, the storm always ends, but only continued movement guarantees you'll be positioned to benefit when it does. Marcus Aurelius faced this exact dynamic governing Rome during plague, war, and betrayal. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He understood that the storm isn't obstacle to progress, it's the mechanism of progress. That suffering you're experiencing, it's not blocking your path, it's building your capacity for what's ahead. The settlement you can't see yet requires the strength you're developing now. The heron represents your future self, already emerged, looking back. That future self sees you're 300 meters from safety. Keep moving, not because it feels good, but because it's rational. Subscribe if this landed. The chains are in your mind. When you emerge, be the heron for others. That's how wisdom survives. Stay dangerous. Stay sovereign.